the biggest news actually starting today. I am taking a new job with still with Texas Forest Service, but I'll be assistant chief in the North Branch, which is fairly outside of the Northeast Texas CDN area. So a little bit of overlap there, but so I've talked to Bill a lot about that in the last month or so, and there is definitely a need for the Forest Service to continue to be involved in the CDN. And I think it's, I also spoke to Andy about this a little earlier today too. And ideally in East Texas Ops in that department, either a regional forester or a district forester is ideal. We also, some names have been tossed around, Andy's being one of them, as far as being involved. I also told Andy this morning, though, it's like we already sort of have Andy. It'd be nice to have somebody else too. So, but just making sure that there's still Forest Service involvement going into the future, get some, at least some good DF involvement in Northeast Texas, I think is really important. So that's really the biggest news on my end. Of course, especially with everything being virtual for the past year or so, it's definitely something I can continue to support and make sure there's a nice transition. And Bill has been, Bill and Annie have been great with really keeping the CDN going largely anyways. And so it hasn't they've really taken the bulk of the work, to be completely honest. So, I'm sure those conversations will continue in the future. And I just hope that the Forest Service sort of carries the torch there, because I do think it's important that we stay involved in the conversation. That's all I have, Bill.
Okay. Annie, anything from your side of the house?
I'll just say congratulations to Lee on that position, and I'm glad that we're virtual so that we can still see you right now. And then also wanted to add that our steering committee for the CDN is going to be convening hopefully sometime later in March. So we wanted to have this meeting with all of our working group leads so that we can possibly provide some items for the agenda for that meeting, and figure out, just bring us all back together and figure out what the CDN is, what direction we're going, and that kind of stuff. So thanks everyone for joining.
Great. And again, feel free to jump on the chat, anybody, if you have any comments. We've got Margaret Stedig here representing fisheries, and Mr. Brister from the Caddo watershed, the Cypress Bayou Caddo Lake group. It's good to have that involvement in the work group leads. I wanted to mention there was an article. I don't know if you can see it. Probably can. I can't get this to focus very good, but yeah, Lee and his wife Hannah, and they're not going to be leaving East Texas because they've invested in a lifetime membership in the Texas Forestry Association. I want to congratulate him for doing that. It's always been something that I've thought about doing, but as cheap as I am, I tend to nickel and dime everything. So, I look for pennies on the road more than I do anything else. But my mother used to say I step over $1 to pick up a dime. But Lee, I really appreciate that investment. It makes me glad to know that you're going to be around East Texas for a while, and you got some property, and glad to have you. What I wanted to do is kick this off with a CDN 101. The Northeast Texas CDN is, see if I can get this screen to share.
Hey, Bill,
Yes.
real quick before you get started, I also I have my replacement here too, Chris Kirby.
Oh, great.
Be the district forester for Russ Smith and Panola County. So he'll be sitting in on the meeting as well.
Okay. Okay. Good enough.
Recognize some of those faces.
Welcome,
A
Chris.
handful of them. What's up?
Okay, let me see if I can get back to this screen share and see if that's going to get it. Okay, do you guys see my screen? Does it say, how did we get here?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Poster boy, he's gonna have to buy uniform shirts now.
Yeah. So anyway, how did we get here? Yeah, I just it's interesting to me to note that the Lower Mississippi Valley Joint Venture started this effort back in 2007, 8, 9, and intend to develop conservation delivery networks in their geography. And of course, the joint venture is focused on bird conservation, but all habitat and all watershed related needs within that geography are part of that habitat investment. And I think it's important that we recognize that and understand where that goes. Also, the idea of strategic habitat conservation, the fact that we can work through that plan, do, learn, once we implement and readjust and move forward. And that concept is really important where we implement. We have to have that implementation arm. And whether it's upland pine, the open pine concept, bottomland hardwoods, or watershed and fisheries, it's very important that we focus on those areas of the joint venture for implementation. The CDN is focused on providing a forum for agencies and organizations that don't always work well together. A lot of times people are stovepiped and they work on the same things, but out inside their own existing walls. And the whole idea of a joint venture and locally a CDN is to prioritize those implementation delivery actions to communicate better with one another, collaborate, and facilitate better outcomes. Use our money wisely, increase communication, capitalize on those opportunities and be a united voice. And I think this Northeast Texas CDN has done a really good job at talking in one voice, going to venues like the NRCS State Technical Action Committee, Advisory Committee, and providing information on how we can better do things like prescribed fire or intermediate forest stand treatments or watershed improvement. We have relevant documents that we're based on. We have a CDN charter. If you're not familiar with that, it's on our joint venture website, Northeast Texas CDN website. There's a 2-page summary that goes into very general guidelines about what we do and how we do it. We have a more intensive depth discussion of those operating guidelines in depth, and then we have that idea of standards and geography. The Arkansas MAV CDN governance document is a document that we based all of these on, and we've built 5 different CDNs over the joint venture area, and Northeast Texas is just one of those. So again, taking this idea of planning, doing, and learning from that implementation and improving is that whole cycle. And in our case, we've spent almost a decade promoting the open pine concept. And I think the background of how we got started as a CDN is really important. The joint venture covers 8 states. It covers, as you can see, a multitude of geographies that are made to operate as a CDN, which means they're large enough to be relevant, but in common resource issues, but they're small enough to be manageable that we can travel to work with each other within an hour or 2 and not have to drive across 3 states to get there. So getting from that point to the East Texas CDN, how did we get from this idea to a very specific locale was again part of that strategy of how we built our open pine model, how we built in our eastern wild turkey habitat needs, how we built in bottomland hardwoods and watershed condition needs, and grasslands. Ideas like the grassland restoration incentive program that our joint venture to the west works with. But with all those plans and all these different working efforts, there's a jumbled mass for newbies to come in. If you're brand new to this, you see all these action plans and various items to visit about, and they can be confusing. And so what we try and do with the CDN is to support, coordinate, and lead, and help guide the different work group leaders with these the untangling the web of chaos. The example of how our CDN works, we have Fish and Wildlife Service, we have NGOs, NRCS, and we have the state agencies, TFS, Texas Parks and Wildlife, with all their various areas. And it's as work group leaders, it's part of your job to help us within those several counties in that watershed, make things relevant to those folks within your area. How do we talk with a common voice? An area that we used initially for our grasslands effort has become the cornerstone of the Oaks and Prairie joint venture and their grassland restoration incentive program, that GRIP that we talk about. The open pine model was based on a 3-year effort to define where is our most important upland forest areas, open pine and mixed pine hardwood, and how do we focus on those priority areas to make conservation relevant. We also have other common resource issues that we blend together into this Northeast Texas CDN. And at our 10-year juncture, we've got this common map now that, working with the longleaf implementation team here in Texas and with our neighbors to the east in Arkansas and Louisiana, we have been able to expand our reach into Northeast Texas to include GRIP counties, Neches River corridor counties, the Middle Trinity River and GRIP counties down to the southwest. And we see a greater role for this Bird Conservation 25 coordination with our valued involvement with Arkansas, Louisiana CDN, Louisiana Longleaf, and again TLIT. And we'll talk about that some more as we go on through the day. So with that, I just wanted to mention that the idea of a Northeast Texas CDN continues to address priorities. we have expanded our geographic focus 3 times just in the 4 years I've been involved. And we have a strong partner involvement, enthusiasm. We have species targets, landscape potential, and we have a valuable landowner pool, landowners that are interested in incentives and in promoting conservation, and the ability to monitor those successful efforts. The monitoring effort is indeed been gratifying with the audio meters, and now we find ourselves changing leadership and expanding grassland and forested wetlands as part of our portfolio. So those are just a little bit of our background, and I wanted to stop sharing and just ask folks if they have any questions about that, or if they would not mind, if they have a question, type it into the chat box so we can carry that on towards the end of the program. Don't hesitate to type something in the chat box if you want more information about a certain item that I mentioned or talked about in that overview of a CDN. How can we do a better job helping to coordinate, oversee, and help you folks do a better job at leading your work group? So with that, I'll shut up and see if we have any questions. The chat box is always open. That's my last comment. Annie or Lee, before we jump into any of the work group leads, any other thoughts?
I think that was a good overview, Bill, and just everyone should know that the CDN wouldn't happen without the partnerships, and I couldn't do my job as a HIP administrator without all of our partnerships. So we'll just keep it up.
Okay, and I expect that we'll be getting, it looks like Quail Forever is going to be moving into the geography at some point. We've got a couple of positions floating around the edge, and Thomas Yankee is working statewide for fire. So it's another partner that's building into our portfolio. And with that, I was just going to mention, since Robert Spate's not here, again, and glad you're here, Margaret, because we started to have this discussion last summer with Marcos de Jesus about how do we bring in the watershed related issues, any needs for fisheries habitat, riparian habitat, things like the restoration of that oxbow in Marion County off of Cypress Bayou, and any efforts that we can provide to promote fisheries or mussel habitat within that basin, Cypress Basin, is always something we want to hear about. And I know Robert and the Caddo Lake Institute are active in that constantly. And with that, I'll unless anyone has questions, I'm going to turn it over to Reagan. Reagan is brand new today on the job after being on leave for a while, and mostly just to say hello and welcome back. But Reagan, any thoughts from you and the Red River counties?
Well, I mean, we're still kind of blowing and going, doing what we do. We've got a few native grass projects going in. If y'all have heard about the solar farms, there's some going in Lamar County. And then towards Red River County, there's also some going in. The latest is kind of Lamar County, and it's about 1,500 acres. It's about I just pulled up some specs on it, but it's about a $250 million project. It's supposed to give a couple of the school districts a little kickback on their electricity, but we'll see how that goes. After this last ice storm we had, I don't know if everybody's so gung-ho to go for solar farms. But as far as native grass projects, we've got a couple in Red River County. I've got 2 working in Lamar County, 1 working in Grayson County. That one's going to be, I may have to try to possibly pull some resources from GRIP on that one. It's going to be a little different project rather than our standard pub projects. It's going to be involving KR Bluestem and trying to figure out how to convert it back to the native prairie. But other resources, we've got a lot of prescribed fire going in. The prescribed fire trailer's been out pretty frequently. In between all the rain that we've had, we get some drying days, and we've already done 2 or 3 prescribed fires up here. I did an 800 acre and a 400 acre, and I think they went ahead and did another 300. But all of that was within like a week period. But as far as cost share, whenever I meet with a landowner, I kind of go with my wheelhouse as far as the programs we have within Parks and Wildlife, and then kind of go, if I can't get the landowner into those projects, then I start looking at GRIP and possibly CDN proposals, especially for some of the more expensive practices like mulching, possibly timber stand improvements and things like that. But there's interest out there, definitely. But I hope, bear with me. Like I said, I've been on medical leave since 1st of October. So today is kind of first day trying to get back at 100%. But if y'all got any questions, just let me know.
Glad you're back with us, Reagan. I think some of us been through the COVID regime. I'm old enough that I had my shots already, so I'm already in the looking at the sunrise of another career, I think, as I get away from COVID, and I hope everybody else can get those soon too. So
mine wasn't COVID related. I did have to deal with COVID. I recently had a baby in October, and we had complications. The short story is she's 4 months old and already had 2 open heart surgeries.
oh my goodness.
So, but she is doing very well. We're back home now, and staff in Dallas Medical City, my hat's off to them. They know what they're doing over there. But yeah, it's been kind of a rough few months up here.
Thanks, Reagan. Next in line is Penny. I hadn't had a chance to visit with Penny, but good to see you again, Penny. And hopefully that you'll have some news to share. How's things going at your end?
So nothing too earth-shattering up from the Sulphur River Basin. We've got one project that's for sure going that is going in 2020. It's basically just prescribed fire and a little bit of mulching probably is going to be what the rest of it is. And then other than that, I mean, we had a workshop before COVID hit, which was pretty good. FS helped us a little bit on that. It was short leaf restoration and just all kinds of different habitat stuff. That was, I think we had about a dozen, a little over participants, and that was good. But like everybody, it's been a challenging year. So hopefully I'll be able to re-engage some of the folks that are on the working group and see kind of what we can put our heads together for the Sulphur area since then. And any suggestions would be good. I would like to put in a word about monitoring and maybe having some protocols about monitoring. I mean, I know you guys have done some of the listening stations, and I'm looking forward to hearing how that turned out, but I think that that's a crucial part of some of the stuff we do is, you know, we do all these projects, and then we don't know, you know, what the effects are on wildlife. So that's kind of one of the things that I think it's a missing step that we haven't figured out yet. So hopefully we can start establishing some monitoring protocols for some of our projects. But so that's really all I've got. Nothing earth shattering. Like I say, it's a challenging year. So hopefully we'll start off and get something done in 21.
Okay, if anybody's got any thoughts or questions again for Penny or anything on the monitoring, put them in the chat box or speak up, whatever works for you. Larry LeBeau's not in, like I mentioned earlier. Larry, as you know, is got probably less than 30 days left before he retires. I think he's still working on his bass boat, but he and I visited the other day, and there's a few opportunities there in the Sabine River Basin. And I think we wanted to follow up some more on the discussion that we started last year about this time, where we met with the staff at Old Sabine Bottom and a lot of the WMA staff to begin that discussion of how can the CDN work better with the WMAs and perhaps pool our resources to make an impact in those areas near the WMAs and in places like Fairchild State Forest, you know, the big blocks that mean something to the public, and that we can invest in some private lands conservation in and around those large blocks of quality habitat. So that was Larry's message. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Reed, who is going to represent that southern tier of counties in the south part of our Northeast Texas area. So Jeff, take it away.
All right, I thought I unmuted myself. My internet connection says internet connection unstable. I thought that just referred to me. So yeah, me and my internet are on the same level. I've got a few NETX working group team members on this in this group today, and I'm going to make y'all speak up on things that are associated with what you're working on. All I can address is the stuff that I'm familiar with, because I'm following the example of the former NETX working group leader, who basically we don't believe in getting meetings together. We just believe in putting acres on the ground. So I separated the stuff that I have into planned, funded, and completed. And I'm only going to talk about the stuff that I personally have worked on. And then I'm going to let Annie talk about the Neches River and the Standard HIP projects that were funded in progress. And then hopefully Jason Ellis will be able to talk to us about the Fairchild and their short-leaf burning, because that was real informative. And then I would like to impose upon Andy if he could throw up to show us what has been burned within the Neches under the grant. That would be helpful. So anyway, that's how I plan to approach this part. So I've been working with Atimo on Tonkawa, trying to secure some shortleaf acreage. I'm trying to get around 200 acres for $25,000. Right now, this TMO has agreed to 109. Still working on getting more. Anyway, that would be an accomplishment of the partners for the Neches, which and the CDN. Working on some other stuff with Parks and Wildlife through Section 6 funds that apply to Boggy Slough Conservation Area in the Neches, where we're going to be doing some, we plan to do some spraying and burning and woodpecker habitat improvement on North and South Boggy Slough. And that's with some money that's coming from another region, and I always like that. Because, I mean, we need to know about all these pots of money, and we need to get as much as we can in East Texas. That's my philosophy. We're planting a shortleaf burn in, what is that, Cherokee County, on some private land. Reuben and Bill and a few others, Rusty, we were out there a couple of weeks ago, and the landowner planted under cost assistance but and he has no requirement to burn, but he's going to burn at his own cost, and we'll be able to count the acres as, I guess, technical assistance or whatever, maybe whatever Bill wants to do. But anyway, it's only going to be about 100 acres, but we're kind of looking at the same type of stuff that Jason's doing up there on the Fairchild. So hopefully a cool day and it doesn't burn everything up. Let's see, these other two will be somebody else. Bobcat, somebody else. We've got a funded and completed project in the, it's actually on the Angelina River which is in the floodplain of the Natchez, 97 acres of tallow control. Got another accomplishment, 205 acres of tallow control. Anyway, those just look good for the bean counters. Monitoring, okay, that's where I got. So Nick, Jason, could you talk about what you found on the Fairchild with your burning? The short leaf?
Sure, definitely. I sent out like a little PowerPoint kind of synopsis of this burn that we did last year in a stand. I see we burned it February of last year, and at the time the short leaf was like 2 years old. And this PowerPoint, if anybody in the group wants it, I'd be glad to share it with y'all. It was an 8-acre site that we had planted back in 2018. So I went back, I flagged a bunch of trees that before the burn, and then went back to those same trees and took pictures after the burn. And I tell you, like during the spring, earlier last year, I took Jeff Cravey with IFCO out there. He'd never seen the site, and he was like, "Man, you should be like having bird watchers come out here, just because of all of the variety and what was on the ground." He was pretty stoked about it. Looking at it this February, having done this this on the ground assessment, majority of the trees I would say that were burned over completely sprouted back. I would say on average they sprouted out about half. They sprouted back half the original height that it was at. So if a tree was 3 feet tall, it sprouted back about a foot and a half tall is what I saw. So kind of makes you wonder, should we have burned it a little bit later? How often should we be doing this? Because obviously don't want to keep setting these trees back. So this is something, that's why we have this set aside. This is something to fool with and to learn from. And it'd be great to bring people out there. I'd love to just have a bunch of people out there. And Bill mentioned having to get folks out there in the spring just to look at it and, pick everybody's brains and see what y'all think. Jeff, did you want me to go over everything else we've done with short leaf real quick while I got everybody's attention, or you want me to wait on that?
Yeah, have at it. I'm going to summarize what you just said because I have a couple paragraph or a couple of sentences written about it. But go ahead and finish, and then I'll hand it off to someone else. Okay.
Just a couple other things real quick as far as what we're doing on the Fairchild. We are still working with National Wild Turkey Federation on we've mulched. I think it's about 60% more or less of a 100-acre red cockaded woodpecker forage area. We're looking to try and do herbicide from here on out and not use the mulcher. We'll eventually send that stand back in the coming years. That's the goal, to create that open concept that wild turkey and RCW like. Let's see, we've started burning. We burned some in October, and we burned some a couple weeks ago. If you drive through the forest, right there where Highway 84 cuts through the forest, you'll see both sides are black. So we're happy to get some fire on the ground there. I have a pine plantation that had been thinned one time that we burned in October. We got a little hot in some areas. So the areas where we got a little too hot, we went ahead and clear cutted recently, and we're gonna those are just wildlife openings that we created. And I'm looking to try and attract turkey there, because in this particular stand, it's actually the picture behind me, it's a picture of the stand. This particular loblolly pine plantation, the turkeys on the forest love this place. So why not, create a couple of forest openings for them? This stand, by the way, it was the second time thinning that we just completed recently. So it was burned in October, and we completed the thinning recently on it. It's been thinned down to 60 basal area, which if there's any consultant foresters in the group are probably looking at me like I'm crazy, because I don't think you typically go down to 60 on a second thinning, but this is a multi-use forest, so we get to do that out here. We also planted some longleaf on the forest. I know we're out of the range, but we had a site that we had actually planted a year ago. My survival was about 200 to 300 trees per acre. So last week we went and filled in the gaps and planted more longleaf seedlings on site. That's it for the Fairchild. I've talked to a few different private landowners about prescribed burning, applying for CDN funding for prescribed burning. I should have at least one landowner that'll be applying for prescribed burning funds this year. And also the CDNs, or in our forest stewardship plans, I made a little write-up, and they go in every plan that we write for every landowner. They basically get to see what CDN is, and that's an opportunity for private landowners. So that's the end of my report.
Unmuted. Great.
Jeff Reed, I think you froze up.
Unstable. We found out Jeff's unstable.
I say Jeff or his internet.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him. I've been unstable many times in my life, and it's a hard thing to overcome.
Who else was Jeff needing to update?
I am certain that let me pull up his
I was on
document.
the list of people, so I'll go if nobody else wants
Yeah,
to.
go ahead, Andy. That's great.
That are doing his reports for him, because that's Jeff's way of doing business. I love it. All right, so let me do screen sharing real quick. This was impromptu, so I didn't know this was coming, but I think you should be seeing an Excel spreadsheet with orange and green. Now yellow.
Not
yet.
seeing anything.
Oh, it's coming up now, Andy.
All right, so yellow
Yeah,
spreadsheet.
There it is.
There we go. We got it.
Okay. All right, so this is kind of the spreadsheet listing of our prescribed fire grants. This is the public version of that. Is that not showing up a PDF with both the orange and the yellow? All right.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't practice this. It's prompt two. So what we got here is a list of our prescribed fire grants in East Texas, mostly East Texas. There's a few that are outside of the region. And I guess update wise, I don't have them split out by whose CDN they land in, but I usually at the end of the year can do that for anybody that wants to know where these acreages land in your individual, kind of work group areas. So far this year, out of that community protection program that's in yellow there, we signed up 8,500 acres. And those are all within 10 miles of the national forest. And we only have 81 acres so far reported that are successfully burned. So 2 burns completed so far this year in that program. But a big chunk of those folks like to burn in the March to June window. So not at all concerned about completion rate. It'll get a 78 to 80% completion rate more than likely on those tracks. And then the second program there, the State Fire Assistance for Mitigation Program, a wider range of counties available. And we have around 5,200 acres, 5,200 acres signed up in that program this year. And so far, 3 burns completed for 452 acres. Those are spread out mostly in, some in Southeast Texas and some in North Texas. And then the final program in green is the Neches River and Cypress Basin program. That's the one that's partners funds through Jeff. And those are for watershed restoration and wildlife habitat rather than wildfire mitigation. We signed up 2,665 acres this year, and we already have 1,100 acres completed. There's a few in there that are partial treatment, so I don't have a solid acreage number. Several of those, they said they're going to go back and pick up, 15 or so acres per tract that didn't burn real well due to some hardwood leaf litter that seems to be a challenge this year. So, but all in all, we're nearing 2,000 acres treated out of the roughly 13,000 I think that we signed up, and so looking forward to a good March through June burn window when most of these tracks are probably going to be completed. So that's what I have out of those programs that are generally probably what Jeff Reed asked me to cover. The last thing I will cover, I've been working with Jason Ellis and his staff over there in Nacogdoches on a project at the Caddo Mounds Historic Site. So we have a 50-acre native grass restoration site that at Alan Shadow and some of the folks from his shop helped those guys set up. And so it's a 2-year-old native grass stand, and looking in the next few weeks here to get a restoration burn completed on that project, which should be pretty neat to have another good showcase of native grass restoration in the area. So that's the last thing for my update.
Okay, so I'm back.
Hey, Jeff.
So I'm back. So my internet connection. Thank you, Andy.
Yes, sir.
I had the 2020 one pager. It said that we did a total of 3,688 acres within the Natchez and the Cypress, but it's not broke out between the Natchez and the Cypress. And I didn't bother to do it because I was doing other stuff. So yeah, Andy delivers a lot through that grant, all the grants that he does, and they benefit a lot of us. Andy had some hip and some turkey priority stuff, I understand. Isn't that right?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I'll plan to go over this a little bit more during my section on the HIP, but in general for the Natchez River HIP for FY19, 2019, we completed nearly 100% of our planned projects in the Natchez River HIP. So 2,326 acres for just over or a little under $85,000. All prescribed burning and herbicide to help with the wild turkey habitat in the Natchez River priority area. And then this year we have another 1,800 acres planned of prescribed burning and herbicide projects that will complete our Natchez River grant agreement with Texas Parks and Wildlife. So we're looking to figure out how to make a cost extension and continue that program.
Okay, I guess I just got one other thing. I've been working with a few people here locally trying to figure out how we can get the stuff on the other side of the river from Boggy Slough under, I don't know, some more type of there's a lot of stuff going on that we don't know about. They're doing burns and they're doing sprays over there. And I'm talking about from Boggy up to Malibu. Other side of the river. Been talking to some contractors, landowners, and anyway, these are the people I don't want to miss next time an RFP comes out, whether it's burning, spraying, whatever. And I got a plan. So anyway, I'm done unless anybody's got questions.
And that's Angelina County, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm not worrying about areas of responsibility because it's all political nonsense anyway. So I'm talking about Angelina County, which is what, Vines and 669 and Pine Island and the Todds. And then you go up above Highway 7 and you're getting into Carl Ray Polk and others that the people that bought Malibu. There's also some top secret stuff going on about land purchases and it's all about to be done. So yeah, Angelina, all the way up. The other side, what's the other side of Houston County? Nacogdoches, Cherokee?
Yeah, get into Cherokee, Nacogdoches. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, and this is a really good point to bring up right now, is that when we expanded the Trinity River group, which we'll roll into Reuben here in just a second, it opened up the west side of the Trinity River. And at that time, we said, well, yeah, we need to look at that river corridor as a whole. We don't want to look at just the east side of the river and incentivize landowners, with a DMZ right down the middle of the river and say the west side doesn't qualify. So we need to have the same philosophy and discussion for that Angelina River as well, where we have the split zones. I'm thinking that's a fairly easy thing to work out with between the CDN steering committee and TLIT. So anyway, I'm glad you brought that up. It's on the record. I got it in the notes.
Hey, what Jeff said about Pine Island, that reminded me too, that there was a turkey cooperative that was approved to get 80 birds and get the super stocking right there across the river in Pine Island area. Oh my gosh, sorry, my dog has a new squeaky toy and she found it. Sorry. Here's your squeaky toy. I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Turkey stocking. No, I think that's it's timely because we know that there's no turkeys on Boggy Slough, but there can be on Pine Island. So it's a good idea. So Ruben, since Andy's dealing with the squeaky toy, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you give some updates on that southwest quadrant.
Okay. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Only updates I have so far is just getting everyone, energized again to put proposals out there. It's been a year now since we've had the Trinity River Working Group, and I only had 3 proposals come in for the falls or end of the summer last go round for requests. None of them got accepted. And that was the one from Mason Conley. And so this year, hopefully one of my needs, and I mentioned to you all last year, maybe getting a little more upfront time and as far as when the deadlines are to come out, because most of the people in the group are fairly new to the working group and the process. But I'm hoping to have a few more projects submitted for those areas. But as far as, promoting any priority restoration and management, I was talking with Rusty this morning. I have a podcast that I'm gonna be speaking on Wednesday of this week with this group called Texas Deer Leases. And one of the topics I'm gonna be covering with them are cost share and habitat incentive programs. And their founders, TDL, Texas Deer Leases, they cover the whole state. But their founders are from the Houston County area. And so hopefully, and that could be another thing we could look at as far as, getting more landowner interest. It sounds like we already, we're having that. But maybe, teaming up with certain media or outreach groups and promoting our voice that way.
And Bill, can I speak on the timeline as far as
You bet.
Our RFPs go? Yeah, Ruben, I know there's been some quick turnaround, especially with this last one. I know there was a lot of turnaround on that, or a lot of not a very quick turnaround on that, but that one came open, sort of got dropped in Bill's lap pretty quickly. So there just wasn't a lot of opportunity to warn everybody on that. And that one's still in the works. But also, I would just really suggest that you find those landowners throughout the year and have those proposals ready. And, unfortunately, sometimes there's just not a lot of warning with some of those RFPs. So I know Bill works to get that in the works as quickly as possible, but just building those projects as you see them and as you find them, and having those sort of ready to go when those RFPs do happen is probably the best way.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Lee. And speaking personally, for Houston County portion of the Trinity River Working Group, we're doing that. But it's, encouraging those new members from those other counties in that corridor, to have that same, ideology as well.
Yeah.
And with COVID and, with COVID starting up, I'm trying to plan an in-person meeting, that went south in the spring. And
Of course.
we lost, momentum with the interest a little bit. But I think we're going to get back around to it. But I think, when I do set up a virtual meeting this year, I think it probably would help to have, I don't want anything spoken, presented twice, because I know we do it at the annual CDN meetings. But if maybe we can have somebody come in and do like an orientation, like Bill did this morning for the group, and how to prepare a project proposal. Because I think the fall would be, to me, a little too late. It'd be good information, but I think we should have that at the beginning of the year, because that's when the first, you all send out, the first request for project.
Yeah.
It's late spring,
Yeah.
And then, hell, if y'all get another one in the fall, then that's two.
And it would probably be good just to have a webinar recorded that goes through all that, so everybody could reference that. And the GRIP actually did a really good job of that. That I told Bill and Annie about that. And it's just an hour-long presentation. Just goes through the whole template, everything that they're looking for. And of course, we do that with the steering committees. And but it'd be good to just run through that, and that way anybody can reference that whenever they want when they're putting together a project.
Copy that. But as far as active HIP project in the Trinity River Working Group area, we have one that will be coming to a completion by this spring. It got extended this past summer. The extension ends April 15th, 2021. And it was at the Hartenberger Ranch, and he was doing 90 acres prescribed burn and woody plant encroachment within his native range or native pasture, and some fire break improvements. And as of now, I spoke with him last week. He has 75% of the site prepped. He's just waiting to get it burned. And this was actually the window he wanted, to do the prescribed burn. And of course, the weather slowed things up, but he's planning on getting it done before April.
Okay. Well, thanks, Ruben.
Yeah, and also I had other few projects to talk about, but I won't. They're in Jeff's Reed area, but Annie, she went over them in, her whole spiel. I don't know if we have time to go in full detail on all of them.
We'll see how we get going here. We got 30 minutes to go, so let's see what we can do. Why don't we move on, and the next up is Brandon Belcher, relatively new to our group. Sean Benedict, with the reorganization or the shuffling at the Nature Conservancy, I wanted to give them some time and allow Sean to talk about some of their prescribed firework that's going on this year. So Sean and Brandon, have at it.
Hey, thanks. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. So Sean Benedict, I know quite a few of the faces, but yeah, as Bill said, kind of reorg. So losing Wendy Ledbetter back in June. So Brandon and myself will be stepping in to kind of pick up a lot of the work that she was doing. So I'm located in Southeast Texas, so down in the Big Thicket area. So kind of anything that's going on in that region. I think especially the prescribed fire aspect and the open pine, woodlands, longleaf, shortleaf work. We're doing some shortleaf work up in Northeast Texas as well, Lennox Woods Preserve up there. So I think this year, I guess with prescribed fire, I think we're just now kind of getting back, getting close to getting some fire on the ground. So we've got 2 burn bosses in the state now. So I think just getting fire plans approved so that we can start moving forward. But I think the future, on the horizon, things look good things getting ready to happen. So.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Good afternoon, everybody. So Brandon Belcher, I'm the North Texas Preserves Manager. I'm based at the Clymer Meadow Preserve. And as Sean said, I recognize a lot of faces, and I think all of the names in here, though I haven't yet met each of you. A lot of my work, sorry, I'll back up. The Clymer Meadow Preserve is in Hunt County. I'm northeast of Dallas, and so just at the edge of the delivery network. Also work with the OPJV, the Oaks and Prairies Joint Ventures. I fit into that side of things perhaps a little better. But as Sean said, we're starting to cover a bigger area with reorganization that we've seen in the last year, and that's ongoing within our chapter. To point out one more thing with fire, we lost our state fire director, and so that's changed some of our prerogative. But Sean, as one of our burn bosses, is helping those of us on the ground to plan our stuff, and so we'll be really up and moving soon in those directions. We haven't burned anything in Texas yet this year. I have been working with a couple different landowners, not with funding, but rather organization on the ground. Some of it assisting with seeding, literally on the ground, and in another direction, helping to organize a third party to do some burning, and also assisting in organizing some follow-up herbicide work, but all grassland projects at this point. But we've got quite a bit to cover, and Sean and I, in covering this space, have a lot of overlap with this group, so we're glad to be part of it. And Bill, thank you for the primer early in the conversation today. That was really helpful for those of us, again, that are new, maybe some others in the call too. But thank you to everybody for inviting us in and allowing us to learn from the group. Look forward to really getting moving on a bunch of these different projects.
Well, good to have you guys, and we'll continue to do a little bit better job. We've heard Ruben mention this, and I've heard it from several others, that we'll continue to try and provide this overview of just what is the purpose of the CDN and how can we work better together, how can we build better projects. So thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Hooker, who is she's handling 2 areas. She's work group lead for the Open Pine work group, and also is working on some virtual meeting field tour communication tools. So Jamie, I'm going to let you give a little overview of what you've been up to.
Okay, we'll start with the updates to the videos and the training. So I don't know, I feel like a lot of you were on the last Longleaf meeting, but for those of you who weren't, currently we're looking at like a lot of the people I talked to wanted to do a spring to early summer kind of filming so that Leaf On is there and you can actually see structural differences in habitat. They thought it would be a better idea. I mean, it makes sense to be able to see what they're talking about with open pine compared to dense pine plantations. So right now I have Cliff Shackelford and Dan Sines doing a bird habitat and reptile habitat section, but they wanted to wait until April, early May. Don Stover also wanted to wait until April, early May to be able to get wildflowers and forbs and all that kind of stuff blooming. So we'll be looking at starting those hopefully soon, starting to pick out dates that actually work. And then, so Bill and I have been talking about doing more of a PowerPoint lecture type training for agency staff. So instead of doing like a video section for those of us who already kind of understand the terms, maybe getting together and having a PowerPoint with video clips and pictures of projects as they've been going. and having people kind of discuss what's going on with that. We were looking at maybe Jason Ellis talking about short leaf at the ID Fairchild and how that's been progressing from before the burn to after it, and pre-thinning, post-thinning kind of things. I reached out to our NWTF forester, Tom Sullivan. He does a lot of longleaf work in Louisiana. And he said he'd be happy to help out. I just need to get him some more information on what we're looking for. But I think like late March would be something good for that. I don't know, Jason, if that seems like something that could work for y'all's timeline of what you've got going, but I think that would be good just to kind of give some people something else to do other than sitting at home and wishing that they were outside. So, and then also the NRCS has been putting together some video ideas for forestry. Brian Townsend and Alan Shadow were kind of heading this up, and it was supposed to start filming last week or 2 weeks ago during snowpocalypse. So that got canceled. But I've seen emails come out this week, and it looks like they're going to reschedule all of that for early May sometime, right, Jenny? I think Jenny and Jeff are both involved in this too, right? Yeah, so their idea for that is to start out at Winston and then go to Boggy Slough, talking about management implications for open pine, the importance of open pine. And I think their hopes with that are they've got the professional NRCS video crew headed down from Colorado to film that. And I think they want to put that together and be something they can share with landowners. Other than that, as far as like videos and training updates, that's all I've got. But I do have some slight NRCS updates that I've been thinking about while we've been talking. So NRCS fire policy changed last year. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it, and they're just now getting to the point where they've got everything down. And Jason Holt, the fire lead for Zone 4 in NRCS, is going to start looking at doing trainings in the spring and summer for new NRCS staff, which I think will be good because right now there's a lot of new people that have started and they don't know anything about fire and can't help plan it because they don't have the proper training. So, and I'm one of them. So hopefully he can get that going soon. He's planning to do a virtual training and then do an on-site small burn field day. And I think that'll hopefully help get more fire out there, because as of right now, any new staff that don't have this training can't even really recommend prescribed burning as a practice at all. So hopefully that'll kind of turn things around. And then the NRCS has also been really pushing I don't know if it's a new practice, but they've really been pushing it this year. Wildlife habitat planting. I think 420 is our code, where it's native grass for wildflower planting for pollinators. And the biologists for Zone 4 put a bunch of trainings on for that. And as far as I'm aware, I've at least helped plan 5 of those that are adjacent to shortleaf pine and post oak stands, mostly in Anderson and Cherokee County. So, but I know I'm not the only one planning it, and it's apparently big enough where they've been sending out weekly updates on acreages and trainings for that. So hopefully that'll kind of help too with, getting more people involved in habitat interest and planting. So that's really all I've got.
Sounds good. Any questions for Jamie from anyone?
Yeah, Jamie, so that fire program, so really that's just training for y'all to be able to write burn plans for landowners, or can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, so NRCS has a bunch of different the wreck going on out there. I don't know if it was horns, but that was not good. But NRCS has a lot of different planning authority levels for practices, and fire is their big, they're really focused on making sure that people have had the training to understand what fire can do and what you telling a landowner that they should burn means. So they've had issues in the past where in other areas of the state, NRCS has written a burn plan, been out on a fire, the fire's gotten out, and it's become a big issue.
Yeah.
since that happened, I think that was 2017 or 18, they've really kind of held back on recommending fire at all and trying to push it other than site prep burns. So these are like stand improvement burns that they're really having issues with. So right now, anyone who has not had the training, which is, I would probably say 60% of the staff in zone 4 right now, because most of them have come on since I've been there, and I don't have the training. So for those of us who don't have it, we're not even really supposed to be recommending using prescribed burning as a practice to private landowners because we don't have the approval authority. So like my job is to write management plans, and I'm a partner with NRCS, but I have to have the fire specialist, Jason Holt, sign off on each plan that I write where I recommend fire, saying that he agrees that, you know. So basically this training that Jason is doing is the, I don't know what they call it, but it's basically like level 1 of you just have the ability to be able to recommend it, put it down on paper, and then there'll be another training later after we do the infield and we burn with him where we can actually plan it on the land as a practice. And then eventually I think they would like to see it where NRCS gets back to writing burn plans, and maybe even further into the future, helping with burns like they used to. But that's going to be like way down the line. I think right now they're just trying to get that entry level training done, because I mean, we're not really allowed to do much as far as recommending burning for anything. So it's been kind of difficult.
So, I mean, are y'all going to follow, or is NRCS going to follow NWCG guidelines? Or, I mean, is this, I mean, have they talked to anybody else about this? Or, I mean,
I don't know. That's all I've really been told, is that right now we can't do anything, and they're trying to figure out what their new policy says and what it means, but I don't really know anything about it.
Lee, this is Andy McCready. There's maybe somebody else on the call that has more info than I do, but there's a new federal standard. Basically, they review these standards, and so they came out with their national level policy on it, or the update last year about this time, and then that has to go through the state level, and the state can decide whether they want to write their own standard based on the federal standard. And I think that's the stage that they're at. They may have completed that. There's the forestry stack committee is supposed to meet in the next week or two. And so maybe we'll have more details after that stack committee meeting, because of our guess is they'll be asking for input on that state standard. We gave them input last year. We'll see what they went with. It's not an NWCG standard or a certified and insured standard. It's their own standard. But what they come up with is hasn't been seen yet. But generally in the past, the state has had its own standard. They haven't stuck with the federal standard. And generally that standard has been a 3 to 4 tier system of these job approval authorities, like Jamie's explaining, where there's a level of education where you can say hey, landowner B, you need to use this practice. And then there's different levels of job approval authority based on your experience and training within NRCS. They provide the experience and the training, not exterior. And that's how you become more qualified within that agency to recommend or even complete prescribed fire on private land. Does that make sense? I think.
Yeah, I think it does. I think we need to, I think it's a really, there's the wildlife stack is going to talk about fire in 2 days. I think it's imperative that some of us be on that forestry stack discussion. Andy, I don't know if you're invited to that. I usually am, but I have not seen an invitation yet for a meeting stack. Jenny, have you seen one for the forestry stack committee?
This is Andy McCready.
I'll give you the Friday, I think.
Yeah, I'll give you the date just a second. It just got determined like in the last 2 days. So
it's March 8th at 2:30.
There you go. Thank you, Annie. Yep.
I don't think the Zoom link or whatever hasn't come out yet though.
Okay.
You can
good to know.
Contact Lori Hazel with Texas A&M Forest Service, or James Hauser probably would be the two leads for that committee if somebody's interested in attending. I don't know how the invitation, who gets invited or what. But after I attended the first one, then they started sending me more invitations. So if you could get in the door, it's not so bad.
Gotcha.
I know Rob Hughes with TFA is the one that's hosting the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, it says, yeah, that we'll get a invitation from Rob. I think. Or no, Brian. Brian will be sending the meeting link.
Sounds good.
But I forwarded that to you.
Okay.
Jamie, one more question, probably not really for the good of the group, but me personally. Did they fill what's the status of the Carthage DC position?
Yeah, they filled the Panola County DC, but so the poor guy was supposed to start in January, and then something happened with paperwork, federal government, I don't know. They reposted the position, he reapplied, and officially has a start date of, I think the 15th maybe. So
Okay.
not next Monday, but the Monday after that, I think.
All right. Cool. Good news.
Pretty exciting. So I've talked to him a couple times and he seems like he will be great. I know he comes from Sulphur Springs area and he says he doesn't have a lot of experience with pine forests. So hopefully we can help him, or maybe he'll reach out to us and we can help him. I don't know, but I plan to be there a lot, helping him get used to that, because he already told me he doesn't really know anything about pine at all. So maybe I can talk him into just doing short leaf all the time.
There you go.
Pine, so
There you go. Talk to that guy.
Jamie, you're the expert, so come in and just tell him, this is really what you should be planting, and you don't need to know anything else.
What's a lava?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, Jamie, it's Jason. Do you have an update on the DC for Cherokee County?
No. That was Jeff Brister's county, right? And he left.
Right.
No, I don't. I do know that a new one started a couple months ago in Anderson County. His name is Kenneth Wolf by email, but he goes by Trace, and he's really new. I think he just graduated for A&M like the winter time, but he's really nice at least. So, but I don't know anything about the Cherokee office.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, that generated a lot of discussion. Thank you, Jamie. Next up is Clay Shipes. Talk about forested wetlands, wetland activities in the CDN and opportunities.
Yeah, thanks. So there hasn't not a whole lot to report as far as like construction side or anything like that on wetlands. I've met with a lot of landowners, especially south of Smith County South and west, thanks to Reuben Gay, all the other private land biologists with Parks and Wildlife and members of this community for forwarding me those names, information. Not a whole lot of interest, a lot of interest in developing wetlands, especially moist soil wetlands. Having talked to a ton of landowners with forested wetlands are interested in, developing those. But a lot of the landowners are looking within our CDN and within the CDN looking for financial assistance. Unfortunately, I do not have anything at my fingertips, at my disposal that I can put towards them. The one good thing, I guess, one thing that has gained a little bit of traction, we're still trying to work through it, is I went on a couple landowner visits with NRCS. There's a couple of biologists with them that are interested in getting more involved in wetlands work. They do have some financial assistance available in certain cases, and they are able to pay for the engineering, some of the surveying that needs to be done in engineering for wetlands. Oh, sorry, I have an echo. But anyway, so they're able to pay for some of that stuff. We chased down a couple of leads. We set them up with several landowners to look at maybe getting some engineers out there to shoot some topos, do some of that work. Fortunately, we've had the initial discussions back in the late summer to early fall, set them up with some landowners, and we still hadn't been able to get engineers out there. So that's really the only avenue I have as far as financial assistance for the wetlands side of it. Hopefully we can work through it. Again, it's taken a long time, but there does seem to be some interest, and hopefully in the future, some potential for NRCS to cost share with some of those landowners to develop wetlands. But really, other than that, I would ask, anybody that's up in the Sulphur River drainage or the Red River drainage. I've met with a few landowners in that area, but haven't really gained a lot of traction or talked to many people. So if you have any landowners up there, especially bottomland hardwoods, things like that, please pass them along my way. I'll be glad to talk to them and help them out.
Thanks, Clay. So, speaking about bottomland hardwoods, I know that's something that we've talked through regarding both the Texas Longleaf implementation team and the Northeast Texas CDN, and how that all fits in our portfolio. And we're talking about a desired forest condition for wildlife in bottomland hardwoods training. But before we got into that, because it has some involvement with TLIT, Jenny has to get on the road. She's probably already on the road now, and just wanted to give her a chance to say hi to everybody and tell folks that we're working together and on their fire and bottomland hardwood issues, streamside zone applications for both, and also with something they're involved with Texan by Nature. So Jenny, if you're still on the horn, can you fill us in on what's going on with TLIT there?
Sure, and I'm sorry, terrible timing. I'm having to go pick up kids from school, but TLIT, as far as implementation, what we've gotten done the past year, we've burned about 4,000, a little over 4,000 acres of longleaf, and planted about 1,000 acres of longleaf, and then done a little bit of about 500 or 600 acres of bottomland hardwood work, specifically Chinese tallow control, and future stuff we've got going on. Jamie mentioned the NRCS videos. I'm excited about that. I'm honestly kind of glad the snow happened and delayed that. I think the spring shoot of those videos is going to be a lot more powerful than any in the dead of winter anyway. But it sounds like those are going to come together real good under Brian, and really good product that I hope that all of us can share to promote open pine management. Bill mentioned the Conservation Wrangler application. The Texan by Nature, if you're, and I can, Bill, you might want to, if people are interested, there's a website, you can look up Texan by Nature and their Conservation Wrangler program. But Texan by Nature, if you're not familiar, is an initiative started by Laura Bush. And it's the goal of their initiative is to just elevate and promote Texan-led partnered conservation efforts in different parts of the state, and provide, it's not a monetary grant, but they provide in-kind support to 6 efforts or organizations every year that are doing unique work, especially in the restoration and an ecosystem services type space. And so we applied for that program. And if you do get on their website, you can look up some of the past recipients of the award. And what they do is they provide support by way of PR and marketing, material development, collateral development, and in particular, what we have asked them for at the TLIT is support in developing or expanding our funding structure. So right now we get an annual grant from NIFWIF that provides all of our funds, from my salary to outreach and communications to the on-the-ground restoration cost share money. And we feel like as the program grows, we're going to have opportunity to spend more money, hopefully. And so possibly looking at one of their real strengths at this initiative, this Conservation Wrangler Texan by Nature, is connecting industry and particularly energy companies through their corporate social responsibility campaigns to support conservation programs. You know, think about the Deepwater Horizon money, oil spill money that has come into conservation. And so we're really optimistic that they seem to be interested in supporting something in this part of the state. They haven't had a conservation wrangler in this part of the state. And so we're excited that if we do get this, and we should find out in the next few months, that it would be something that we could replicate and expand into the CDN counties very easily. And in fact, that was, especially as we're able to develop any kind of corporate structure to add to our funding, I think it would be a natural expansion to, you know, expand that into short leaf perhaps at some point. So I think it's going to be a beneficial thing to all the partners, and hopefully create some materials and outreach and that'll help all of us. So like I said, Bill, I'm driving now, so I don't have my notes. What else was I supposed to talk about?
I think that covers it with the fact that we're running, you know, tight on time. I think that the main thing is just to say that we're looking at alternative resources for outreach and education. We tried the Safari Club. We'll try it again for a grant that they have available. Texan by Nature is another option. And I think all of the conservation incentive programs could use a more structured outreach program, communication tool for all our delivery team members, so they can have a good way to reach out and connect people. Just like the Bottomland Hardwood, we've got a training session underway to promote desired featured forest conditions for wildlife. And in contrast to the last 30 years, where, in fact, I read a stewardship plan the other day that said the goal for the Bottomland Hardwood 500 acres on this site was to leave it alone and let nature take its course and let water and watershed apply. It's, you know, it was a nice, colorful passage, but it had absolutely no management driven in there. And that's not what you need, especially where we got issues with tallow and other aspects. So anyway, enough said on that. And Jenny, thanks for that input, getting a chance to visit with some of the people in this group that you don't know. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Annie and let her give that summary from 2020 as kind of a closeout. And if we have any time, we can go a little farther over and cover the Q&A. Ruben had a question on work in bottomland hardwoods and forested wetlands. So Annie,
Can
go
you
ahead.
see my screen, Bill?
I can. Looks good.
Okay. I have to jump off for another meeting at 3, so I'll try and make it quick. But I did want to mention, back to my train of thought that I lost earlier, that toy came from Clay Shipe. So shout out to Clay for giving my dog that toy. But the turkey releases, we had the one in Pine Island that hasn't started getting turkeys yet. We had 2 release sites this past year. One up in Titus County, it was actually completed last week. They got their 80 birds. And then Franklin County is also in progress. We got 40 total turkeys that were released last week. So it was a bunch in 1 week. So that was exciting. And then we have 2 co-ops in Delta Hopkins County area that will evaluate this summer that passed the GIS portion. So there's 2 more potentials for next year that will get turkeys. But just a quick overview of the HIP. This kind of is just a reminder of where we are with funding from FY 2017 through today. The majority of our funds have come from Texas Parks and Wildlife Stamp Funds, 120 from NIFWIF, and then our PR grant in the Natchez River HIP. And FY 2022, not sure yet. This is basically just the distribution of our projects since 2017. You can see they're heavily concentrated in the Natchez River priority area. I think about a little, maybe over 20 projects are in that Nature's River priority area. We've completed 38 total since 2017. We have 23 still in progress. This is an overview of what was completed last year in our standard HIP. We had, as you can see, we had 3,176 acres that were planned and only 1,200 were completed. So that's less than 40% of the projects were completed last year. A lot of that had to do with a really wet winter, and COVID kind of put a damper on a lot of stuff. Like this project 1810 that was extended from 2019 was actually just flat out canceled because the landowner couldn't afford to pay for the project up front because of COVID, losing his job to COVID. So unfortunately, that required a lot of projects to be extended. So all of these projects down here at the bottom graph had to be extended through 2021 this year. So here's where we are for this year. We have 12 projects that are new that were submitted last summer. And then I think it's 7 or 8 were extended from last year. We are only at 582 acres out of our 4,876 that were planned, only completed $16,000 worth of work so far. So these projects are not going to be able to be extended through next year because the funding will go away at the end of August. So if it is, any of these projects are not complete by the end of August, they will not be extended for funding, and it might affect our ability to get more funding in the future if we can't pay for, or if we can't spend the grants down. So the green and the blue represents which grant it was paid out of. So the blue was paid out of Texas Parks and Wildlife grant, and the green was paid out of NIFWIF grant, but that is really just an accounting thing. And then back to what I had mentioned in our Nature's River working group talk earlier, we had almost 100, it was 99.5% of our projects for last year were completed. And then this year, several of the burns have been completed, but not reimbursed yet. They're still waiting to go out and check and see how the burns turned out and certify the work. But we are on track to complete the majority of those acres this year too. So that's all I have, I think. Yep. Thanks, Bill.
Questions for Annie before she takes off? Okay, Annie, if you got to run, feel free. Thanks for hanging in here for the full time slot. We've got the question that, Ruben asked, do landowners need to work with certified contractors for doing any bottomland hardwood mechanical work, similar to how we recommend contractors or recommend to landowners to use an NWCG contractor for prescribed burning? And I would throw that question out to Lee or Jason and Andy in terms of Texas Forest Service. I've got an answer, but I don't know what the canned answer is for TFS.
Yeah, the answer is no. Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, there's really not a lot of certifications with. I mean, there's the Pro Logger cert, but no, there's not a certification for managing bottomland hardwood. I feel like it's definitely a big gap in the forest industry in general, even among foresters, consultant foresters, as far as management of bottomland hardwood. In my experience and in my area, it seems like that's something that's sort of lacking. So there's definitely not a certification for loggers to do that.
I'd agree.
Go ahead, Jason.
The same way. Go ahead, Andy.
Oh, I was just going to say that the only thing I might add to it is the watch out situation is more to do with Section 404 wetlands and whether or not the site that you're working in is a jurisdictional wetland. Therefore, are you using federal dollars on that ground? and therefore are you breaking ground, or is it a practice that's acceptable? Of course, we got into some of that stuff in the past with different practices. Probably not what you're talking about here with mechanical and bottomland hardwoods, but that is at least what I've run into the past. Is once you're down there in those bottomland hardwoods, now you have a landowner that's like, well, while we're here, could we do X, Y, Z? And now you start getting into those issues, and that's something a contractor's probably either A, not going to know about, or B, not want to back out of when he's making money. So you, as the kind of subject matter expert in the room, are going to be the one that needs to maybe know when you're, getting outside of what you ought to be doing in a jurisdictional wetland.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to bring up too, was the wetland issue. If basically, if you've got landowners that are interested, say, in applying for cost shares, they need to be careful what they do in the bottomland, and even what's been done in the past. Like, for instance, someone could actually say if they were wanting to get cost shares for planting pine, had they done something to the bottomland in the past, like clear cut it over, disturb the soil, in that could actually negate them from even getting the cost shares. So that's something to think about. I didn't know that till about a year ago. And then alluding to what Lee said, I agree. Like, I need more. There needs to be hardwood education in East Texas, period. Just because I know from my degree, I felt like I had a pretty good understanding, but the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know enough. So that might be something to address in the future. It's cool to see that we're talking about bottomland hardwood though in this meeting.
Thank y'all. Yeah, I just wanted to make it just clarification, because we bounce around from all these programs, whether it's ones with the state, with Parks and Wildlife and CDN, you get confusing sometimes. But to my knowledge, for the CDN, and I was talking with Andy earlier, HIP doesn't have the requirement of having a certified burner or contractor for any practices, right? I mean, we don't. I mean, they can take recommendation. And this is just CDN, but
yeah,
and we can advise them, to mitigate, the impacts depending on the season. But if they wanted to go out and do a burn, they don't. The prescribed burner technically doesn't have to be an NWCG.
No.
Okay.
No, and it's really the same with Equip too. You don't have to have a certified burn manager or an NWCG qualified burn boss to do it. And so now, I mean, one can make the argument that there should be some literature in there that says that we at least suggest that, and we're might be asking for it by not saying that, but no, there's really as far as the job has to be done and has to meet, specifications from an ecological perspective. But as far as how it gets done, there's a lot of leeway there.
So,
Ruben, I would add, my
Okay.
landowner that's in the CDN burns his own tracks. So he doesn't use a contractor, and, it's working well for him. That's why I recommended the CDN to him. He didn't want a contractor. He wants to do his own burning. That's why this program works good for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really Equip, but just a little less hoops to jump through and a little more money for the landowner, not overall.
There's another part of that bottomland hardwood discussion that's worthwhile. That the framework that they're trying to put together with this desired forest condition for wildlife is it provides some very clear guidance on how to evaluate the stand, mark the stand, the desired conditions you're shooting for, the basal area and the mix of species, and a lot of good, simple guidelines on how to do it right, with some restrictions on when, time of year, wet conditions, things like that would allow those guidelines to work for a WRP easement or any other federally held easement. So they meet all of the guidelines. So I think as we get into this and get more proactive with bottomland hardwood, I think the more it's going to become easier to get some of these things done. Where in the past we've tended to shy away and avoid. So,
Hey, Ruben, I'd like to add one thing on what I just said, and that's that landowners have a tendency when they're doing their own work to then, ask for your assistance. And in my opinion, ethically, if you've got a landowner that's getting a cost share for a project, I'm not going to go out there and maybe provide my labor as a government employee. Advice is one thing, technical guidance is one thing, but I would be careful. And this is just from my side of things. If you have a landowner that you're going to be doing the burn for them, that's probably not a project for CDN, where you're doing a training burn. But the nice thing is you guys are, I think, trying to do a training burn and then turn that landowner loose on their own at that point. And that would maybe be when they would turn into a CDN project after they've got their wheels turning.
good discussion. Any other comments or questions? I'll put the notes together, get with Lee and Annie and rough them out and send them out in draft. I'll also try and edit the meeting. I've recorded that. We're trying to make these a little bit more available to people. So if they want to listen to any parts that they want to hear again, we should have that up on our website. So Lee, anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think I'm good, Bill. Thanks for putting this together. I think it was some good discussions.
Okay. We'll have a Northeast Texas CDN steering committee meeting in about a month. We're setting the date now. We'll bring some of these points to them for discussion. I think they're going through the same issue where we have several members that have rolled off and new people coming in. So we'll be refreshing memories about what we do and why we do it, how we do it. And we'll be in touch after that, I'm sure, with some days and deadlines. I think we expect, excuse me, I think we're probably looking at the annual meeting again in September, either the 7th or the 14th. If you have a preference, let us know, and we'll bring that up to the steering committee and see if we can set that date. Okay. Lee, that's all I got. Anyone else comments or questions? Okay. Well, thanks everybody. It's a good way to spend a rainy day. Now dry up and let's start burning.
That's all right. Thanks, Bill. Thank y'all.
Okay.
Thank you. Y'all be safe.
Adios.
Thanks, everybody.
Guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.